welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. Joining me, my co-host and family counselor, Alyson Schafer. Today we're talking about one of those topics, again, that covers all kinds of, all ages, all kinds of kids, and that's eating and eating issues.
Yes.
Yeah. Is this, now I know you've been doing this for so many years, is this one of the topics that is the most popular for people, parents who are just frustrated?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a very, very common problem.
Yeah, like sleeping, eating, like all of those.
There's some classics.
Yeah.
There's some classics for sure. And, and I think one of the reasons why food is such an issue now is because we know so much more about nutrition. I mean, if you think of just how adults talk about food with their kale smoothies and their avocado this, I think basically someone told me if you put an avocado on Instagram, you'll just get like 1 million likes. Just like we just have like a love for the avocado. We got the paleo, we got the keto, everyone wants to know about micronutrients. All of us are talking a lot about food. And of course, if you're the parent and you're raising kids, you've got this idea that you want them to have optimal health because it's our responsibility. So we end up micromanaging and often create food issues unwittingly, our best intentions end up creating the very problems that we're trying to avoid.
Well, and it's also that stress, right? As a parent, you want to do what's best for your kids, and so now you're reading new things, every year it's something new. You should eat it, you shouldn't eat it.
Yeah.
That's good, it's not good now. So it's keeping up and figuring out what's best for you, what's best for the kids. And if you're a picky eater or you have certain restrictions, now it makes it more difficult.
Yeah, oh, for sure, for sure. So I think, just as a general guideline for parents, I would say that you need to be thinking about how your child can have a good relationship with food, one that is based on health and nutrition, for sure. They need to be educated about where you get your different vitamins and minerals and things like that, and that can be fun and interesting. But you really want mealtime to not actually be about food. I mean, it's about breaking bread, but it is as a form of bonding that you would come together and share a meal. But the sharing the meal wasn't saying like, hey, how many calories in your wildebeest? It's, when you got together around the fire, it was about talking about the stories and the storytelling, and we've lost that. Our dinner tables have now become a zone where it's like one more bite, just take one more bite, and don't kick your brother, and all those issues that distract us from what we're supposed to be doing around the family table. And we're eating less as a society together too. We pretty much breakfast is on the fly. Kids eat lunch at school, and now because of extracurriculars and parents that have to commute, we're not even hardly having dinner together anymore. So we really need to reclaim the family dinner table as a bonding experience, and stop getting so excited about how many vitamin A's are in that particular bite.
Right. I've heard you say it many times, that disclaimer, you're not a doctor, you're not a dietitian.
I just play one on TV. No,
but what we're talking about is the idea around eating.
Right, and behaviors around eating. But a nutritionist and your family doctor are your best allies. And I say that because parents will think their kids are not healthy or not eating right or more worried and anxious about it. And I say, if that's the case, instead of worrying about it every day, increase the number of check-ins that you have with your doctor, because they can assess whether or not the child is staying on their growth curve. And just so people understand, you may have a kid who's at the 10th percentile. You can't feed them up to the 90th percentile. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So long as they stay on the 10th percentile, it means they're just part of the 10% of the population that are those little weeny beanie babies.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that they're unwell. We come in a variety.
The curve.
Yeah, they need to stay in the curve, and the doctor will be the one that can measure that. And the other thing is that it's also not linear. You'll have kids that they'll grow wide, and then they'll have a growth spurt. And so when they're growing wide, you might be going, oh, I don't know, is my kid putting on weight? Is this unhealthy? And then next thing you know, they spurt like a beanpole. Right. So I think parents need to just chillax, if I can say that. Yes. But check in with your pediatrician if it's a concern for you. And I mean, I've worked with so many doctors, and they really don't see malnutrition. There's so many micronutrients now that are put into things like bread and milk and things that are additives that don't need to be there, but they know that the general population of children eat them regularly, and so it's very rare. We're going to get kwashiorkor or something in 2018 in Ontario.
So we've been asking folks to send in emails. This one I think will hit a nerve with a lot of parents. Alyson, my children are carb fanatics. I can't seem to get them to touch vegetables. I know I've been lazy in pushing the issue, but they're now 8 and 10, and I really have to tackle this issue. Where do I begin? You know, there's a lot of parents who their kids live on chicken nuggets. Their kids live on pasta for months and years. So it's hard to break that.
Yeah, it's true. And I would say that the standard North American diet and what we typically feed kids, you know, if you were to look at it around the world, around the globe, and compare what we call regular food for kids versus other places, it is pretty shoddy. We're certainly missing out on a lot of vegetables, that's for sure. So the thing is, the palate gets trained. You know, if you're a little kid growing up in India, you've been having curry since the day you were born. Like, that's your palate is climatized to that. This person hasn't had vegetables in their kids' diets, and they're how old? 8 and 10. Yeah. So that's going to take some adjusting, because that is not, broccoli is not going to taste like white bread. It's going to be a whole, nowhere close, nowhere close to apple juice. So it's going to have to be a game of exposure. And again, we're always trying to not force obedience, but to stimulate cooperation. It's always the game. So I think the minute you force, you're going to get a kid. Try forcing a kid to eat something. They will either, as my niece did, stick it up under the cheek up here, or you can't see it, or you're hiding it.
Yes.
You know, or the old spit in the napkin and feed to the dog, or the classic vomit. You know, if you're going to go all stop, you can get something in a kid's mouth, but you can't necessarily get them to swallow it. So we don't want to force. We want to win their cooperation. So we want to keep it light. We want to keep it fun, and we want to make it a little bit more long term, because when it comes to adjusting your diet, it's exposure. It's slow exposure to a variety of vegetables and trying them in different ways. It's a game of creativity. And we certainly know that kids are much more likely to be interested in food if they participate in decision making and actually in the preparation. And so get them in the kitchen, get them making vegetable soup with you, because they're going to be like, this is my vegetable soup. I think it tastes awesome, you know, which is better than serving them. And I also think that you can introduce them at the hungriest time of the day, which tends to be after school. Kids are ravenous for snacks. And if the only thing that's sitting out there is a bunch of, you know, carrots and celery, cucumber, and some ranch dip, chances are that's more likely to get eaten than the vegetables that are put on your plate at dinner time.
Right.
Yeah.
You always hear that when, you know, your child goes to a friend's house and comes back, and you go, what did you have for dinner? And they go, oh, we had stew. And I'm like, what? You would
never eat stew if I made it. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. The same with kids that go off to daycare where there's a meal plan, and you'll discover all kinds of things that your kids will eat, which goes to show you that your kids have learned something about you, which is that if they protest and demand, that you will cave and give them the thing that they would prefer. And if they would prefer chicken fingers over fish, then if they complain loudly enough, you'll give them their chicken fingers. So a lot of their behavior is really predicated on our behavior, our parenting behavior. So we've got to stand tough on some of our decisions.
There's been times at my house where fish and chips has been called chicken fingers and chips. Is that wrong? Is lying wrong?
It's the white battered stuff, isn't it?
Right. It's great. It's great. You mentioned broccoli.
Yeah.
This question is, any advice you have for a kid with sensory issues? She doesn't like the texture of many foods.
Yeah.
So introducing those new textures.
Yeah. So again, you know, that's just slow and gradual exposure. But I think the other thing that we can talk about is that people do have different preferences. I mean, we give such a hard time to kids, but the truth is, I know all kinds of adults that don't like tomatoes or, you know, whatever because of texture. And so the question becomes, what do they do with that? If they become demanding and expect the world to comply to them, then that's the problem. The question is, how are you going to live when you've got sensory issues? What will you do when you go to friends' houses, or if you're a business person, you're going out to a business lunch and you've got these things? How do you do it politely? How do you get get around it.
Right.
And again, just continue with that exposure if they're willing. Try that. Would you like a little polite bite? And there's some things where, it's rarely going to be an entire category of food. So what I try to avoid is a child who gets a special meal. Right? And again, whether that's your kid who's got celiac or whatever, I don't want them to get the idea that they're different and other, and maybe feel superior or maybe feel inferior, that they're not participating in what everyone else is participating in. So what I would say is try to serve your meals as much as possible in the family style format where things are in serving bowls. So if that person has some texture issue that they don't like, maybe they're not going to eat the mashed potatoes, but there's all these other serving bowls and they can serve out of those, and nobody is noticing that they got special dispensation for their issue. And I just keep it kind of on the low down. I don't want them to go, I'm that person. I'm the picky eater. Because once they get a label like that, then when they decide that they would like to expand their horizons and try something new, they almost feel like, well, everybody's watching. Who would I be if I
going to comment? Yeah.
Yes, they're going to and if I try a little bit, are they going to say, well, that wasn't so bad, and push me further into my discomfort zone, and I don't want the pressure, so I'm just going to keep things where they're at.
Right. So. You are touching a little bit on an area of, while this is for a sensory or a picky eater, the idea of not making 4 meals in one sitting extends to just everybody, right? It's a lot of times parents are making 4 different meals. And it's not just for the sensory, it's this kid and this one, and then you're eating, no carbs, and so you're spending your entire night cooking.
Right. So the idea is, in a family, we all have different roles and responsibilities, and those may be based on ability. Parents know how to cook, but you should be teaching your kids those life skills as soon as possible. Maybe you team up. But the idea is that nobody in the family should be put upon. That when you live in a tribe, when you live in a community, you don't get to be the privileged person who sits and says, peel me a grape. I did nothing all day, but you should serve me. And this is how kids end up getting an idea that they are entitled. They feel that that's the way that life unfolds in their nuclear home in the early years of life. That becomes their expectation for all of life. And so that's going to transcend what they expect in the classroom, what they expect in the workforce. And I want kids to understand that when you live in a community, that it's the give and take, that you participate and you don't withdraw, such that other people are burdened by your existence. And so, I'm not going to be a short order cook. That's not going to be helpful. Now, that doesn't mean that I can't say, well, you can have some choice in helping me make a dinner menu, or I can take into consideration that you've got some likes and some dislikes in the context of everybody else. So those kinds of small, easy accommodations are fine. But somebody who is making separate meals for every kid in the family as a way of solving the problem of how we get around community eating and different preferences is not doing a good job of training their child for living in groups, which is ultimately where we survive and thrive.
Well, and that's easy, not easy, but it's easier to adapt that as children are growing. What happens if you've been doing that for a long time? How do you get away from that and start to change that dynamic?
So I think that part of it starts with firing yourself from the job and being really committed when you've really can't stand it enough that you decide I'm drawing a line in the sand. And then I think we present it to our kids in a way that is respectful to them. So I don't want to be saying you've been abusing me for 15 years. I would much rather own my part of it, which I've been complicit in this system. And I say, you know what? I realized it's actually really disrespectful to you, and it's disrespectful to me to think that we have to do meals like this. And in fact, I know that you guys are quite capable of eating what everybody eats or sharing a community meal, and I'm unwilling. We're stating what we're willing to do, what we're willing to do, and what we're unwilling to do. And I am no longer willing to make special meals. So, we'll have to work around that. And it may be if some kid's really committed to what they want to eat and they get up and make their own meal, I think that's completely fine, so long as they clean up after themselves. So the way that I frame it with younger kids is I kind of say there's kind of 2 packages here. You can get with the family plan where mom does the cooking or dad does the cooking, but then you got to eat the meal that's made.
Right.
Or you can go the solo package and look after yourself. But that means you got to cook your own meals and clean up after and do your own thing independently, but responsibly. So if peanut butter sandwiches is, going to float your boat for dinner, then, don't bother, make it, clean up, and that's great. But don't be looking over at our plates and realizing there's something interesting over there. It's an either or. And a lot of kids will try that out, and do the solo package for a while. And then they realize it is a pain. It is there's much more benefit in eating something that you maybe don't love, but then you don't also have to do the cleaning, and you don't have to, you can get pretty tired of peanut butter sandwiches if it's day in, day out.
What about lunches?
Hate them.
Lunches. Yeah, there's nothing worse.
I know, every parent hates that. It's so hard to get creative in the morning, and you're like opening the fridge, and you're like, I don't know, what have I got in here? Here's a pepperette.
It's kind of like September, you get the bento boxes and, homemade, and June, you're just throwing in some croutons.
That's right. That's right.
It's good. You're good.
Oh yeah, well, I know. There is our creative spark and motivation does decline as the year goes on for sure. The way it worked best for me was for me to have just a system that I repeated. So there's actually something called decision fatigue. Our brain only can handle so many decisions, and then we just fall off. And that's why people like, Barack Obama always wears a blue suit, and every night at 7:00 he has 7 almonds. And these are all things that he needs to use his brain for making, decisions on a world scale, so he doesn't want to waste his decisions on simple things like wardrobes and snack. So I think as a parent we could take the same advice and say you don't need to invent the wheel every morning like we're starting with a blank slate. Instead, let's come up with a roster of things that your kids like, that that you could have in the house, and put them on a meal plan for the week. And then I just said to my kids, because eventually they'll say like, I'm tired of ravioli. It's like, I get it. You get tired of things. I totally get it. But you can't take something off the list until you add something else on, so that we always keep the number of things. And I say, look around the table of your friends' lunches. What is out there that looks interesting? What exactly are you?
Pack two.
Yeah, that's right. Tell Tyler's mom. So what are you swapping? What's looking good out there, and bring home the ideas, or have them sit down and go on Pinterest with you, because there's all kinds of crazy, fun ideas sometimes on Pinterest too. But that way you're not constantly having to just wake up and think about it. And the sooner you can get your kids making their own lunches, by the way, you can work with them. It might take them 6 months or a whole full school year of you saying, come on, lunches are combined effort, so that they learn how to pack things and make good choices of all the different food groups. But kids can and will make their own lunches, and we should probably stay out of it. It's one less thing for us to do.
Right. Another question here. My kids are 3 and 5. They refuse to sit still at the dinner table and eat. In fact, I still have to put food on a fork and feed my 5-year-old to get anything in him. How do I get them to just stay at the table and just eat like normal people?
It's like normal.
Please, just be normal.
So here again is a great opportunity to practice child guidance through the use of logical consequences. So what we're trying to do is train for social living. So she's saying, what do normal people do? This is what we want to train them. Regular people in our society. So you would have different training if you were in Japan or other parts. In our society, you come to the table, you're served your plate. When you're finished your plate, you say, may I be excused? You get down from the table, and that's the end of the mealtime. So we have to make that experience happen for our kids. So again, I can't make them eat. I can't make them stay at the table, but I can tell them that the requirements of having your plate is that you stay at the table. So when they get down, say, well, it looks like you're excusing yourself. In our culture, that means the meal is done when you excuse yourself. And I would push their plate to the middle of the table or put it in the fridge or whatever. So getting down means no more food. Very quickly, when a child experiences that when you get down, you're done, and half an hour later you get hungry, the idea is not to rub their nose in it. The idea is to just let the experience fold and let the experience be the teacher. So we can just go, oh, I'm sorry, you misjudged. You thought you had enough in your tummy to make it through till breakfast and you didn't. Oh, well, you can try again tomorrow. Give it a rub.
So you're not giving them food.
So this is very important. If your kid then says they're hungry and you let them have food, you're basically saying you can eat anytime you want. You do not need to conform and comply to the social order. We do everything on your terms. Again, that learning creates an attitude of entitlement and this is not healthy training. So I would say, no, I'm sorry, mealtime is come and gone. Now, a lot of people have snacks for their kids, and I have no trouble with snack. But that snack should be the same. Well, it can be one of two things. It can either be whatever snack you had planned, graham cracker and 2 slices of apple. Or you can say, oh, well, it's snack time and there's still food on your dinner plate in the fridge. I'll just take the saran wrap off that. And snack tonight is broccoli and chicken, which is, that's okay too, right?
Yeah.
So, but what you don't want to do is to have them move up snack time so that it's like 15 minutes after they get down from the table. And instead of having snack, they end up having something big because you're like, well, they didn't have dinner.
Right.
So you end up giving them like a bagel and cream cheese and a whole, like, that's way too much.
Right. And we've talked about this in other shows too. The idea of doing this means you have to suffer through maybe a freak out or two for a few hours versus 6 months of having this table game and up and down and all over the place.
Years.
It's
and every time you're having to yell and nag and remind, you're hurting the relationship. So yeah, it's not nice to have a kid protest that they don't like, how things have gone down, that they don't like that there's, that they're disappointed in themselves for their decision. They might feel like you did it to them the first time. And it's like, actually, it's not nothing I did to you. I'm just upholding the family order, which is why you need to be consistent.
Yeah.
What's really problematic and why kids will really blow up if you say, sometimes when I get down from the table, they don't seem to mind and I get my food back. Other times when they're really fed up, they say, that's it, you don't get your meal. Well, what is that? That is so random and so arbitrary that the child doesn't know what the rules are. And so when you do follow through, they actually feel that you are being mean, because you haven't been consistent.
Right.
So consistency is really the key. And for parents listening and maybe getting enthused with all the ideas that they're learning over all these multiple episodes, don't be trying everything at once. First of all, you'll freak your kid out, but you will be so overwhelmed and you will be unsuccessful because you'll only hold it up for a couple of days and then it'll come down like a house of cards. So you say, what, this week I'm just dealing with the kids getting up and down from the table. This week I'm just going to deal with improving dawdling at bedtime. Just pick one thing until you have completed it to the point where you're getting the behavior that you want, then start the next one.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the greatest things that I learned from you as a friend is the idea of self-care and, how important it is, the idea of I don't eat my favorite foods every day. I don't get a favorite meal every day.
You don't put your food on. No.
Sometimes it's like an okay meal, but that's the meal that we're having. And, learning that.
Yeah.
And that, my job is not to make you happy every single day because I'm not happy every single day.
Yeah. And people need a happy mommy. And sometimes mommies want to have weird things like tuna tacos or salmon. Yes. Crazy, right? And we don't need to be eating kid. I can't believe how many either parents who eat kid food, even though they don't particularly like it, and I don't even think there should be kid food. I think it should look much more like adult food. Or people who don't eat with their kids because they end up saying like, well, I'll feed the kids. We're standing up. We're not even sitting at the table with them. We're not engaging in the social aspect. And then we eat later when our partner comes home. And I'd really like to see, even if you aren't eating, sit with them. Sit with them. And better yet, eat with them. And better yet, eat more adult-style food.
No chicken nuggets.
Too many chicken
Every
nuggets.
meal. Yes.
Too many chicken nuggets.
I'm just speaking from experience. We've done a few different episodes. We talked one about teens. This was a topic that was brought up, but I think it's important to bring it up again. My daughter is now 12 and wants to go on a diet to lose some weight. I'm so worried about anorexia and body image issues, but want to support her. What is your best advice?
Yeah, and so it's really fair. We have a childhood obesity epidemic. And yet we also have this problem where we've got kids that are unhealthily trying to meet a skinny body ideal that's promoted in the media. So I think as a parent, I want to hear my kids' concern. I want to approach this from a health perspective, not a beauty perspective. And so, yes, take them to the doctor, see if the doctor agrees. And anything that is based on a basic food plan, so never eliminating an entire food group, nothing that's a quirky something that's lose it all in a month kind of a thing. It's really, to me, a diet is exactly that. It is just the same way that a dog has a diet, a horse has a diet. Everything we eat is our diet. So how do we have something kind of common sense that's just robust in all vitamins and minerals? And I would be supportive around that. So if health, nutrition, doctor recommended is the way to go, and just keep it apart from looking good. It's about feeling good.
Well, and that's very difficult to do, that idea of keeping it apart, because a lot of times it stems from maybe a parent who doesn't have that proper body image.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of making sure that everybody is on the same page.
Yep, and we have to model, and sometimes it is hard. Sometimes there are parents who are overweight and for health reasons need to bring their weight down, and it's hard to diet in front of your children. But again, it's the messaging that we send. So it's much better to say, I'm going to choose something that has more vitamins and minerals, and this is good for my body. This has X, Y, and Z that are empty calories or create extra cholesterol that I don't need. I want to couch it around that more sort of education and just trying to keep it on the lowdown. We don't need to have a little comment about every little thing that we pop in our mouths or every time we look in the mirror. We talk about it all the time. Like, just pay attention. Just pay attention how many times in the course of the day that somebody comments about, I shouldn't eat this, or I'm so fat, or like, it's constant in our cultural chat. So I just think the more we just keep it on the lowdown, just do your right stuff and keep the conversation less.
Well, not just body image, it's also the idea of we create social environments around food. So now everything revolves around that ideal and eating and socializing and doing those things as well. We've talked a lot about the issues of food. There's more information on your website.
Yes, please visit my website. I've got a whole resource page. It's got all kinds of books by other authors that are compatible with my writings and with Adlerian thought. And as well, I've got all kinds of blog posts and videos that both reside on my site and my YouTube channel. And there's an e-newsletter if you want me to ping you when I put new things up. And I invite people to put comments and questions in the comment field as well, so I can carry on the conversation with them there. And so they can chat with other like-minded Adlerian parents.
Right. And workshops as well. Because I know when you are not sitting on a couch, you are all over the place.
All about the teaching. I'm all about the teaching.
Yes.
Those who can't.
Yeah. Your books as well are on the website.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure people are aware of that. If you want more information about the parenting show as well, please make sure you check out rogerstv.com. That's information on the show and all of the issues that are available, because we discuss different issues on each episode. So you don't want to miss that. But for now, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on The Parenting Show.